Welcome to Ohio Roots, the official podcast of the Ohio Genealogical Society. Join us as we embark on a captivating journey through Ohio's rich genealogy, history, and abundant resources. Hosted by me, OGS Executive Director Noel Poirier, this podcast brings you insightful conversations with a diverse array of guests, from OGS members, chapter leaders, and staff to renowned genealogists, historians, and influential figures within the genealogical community. Each episode delves into fascinating topics and captivating stories. So grab your headphones, hit that play button, and join us on this enthralling journey of Ohio's roots. Our guest on this episode of the Ohio Roots podcast is Steve Little. Steve is the AI Program Director for the National Genealogical Society, and he is here today to help us all better understand artificial intelligence and specifically how it can be used to aid us in our genealogical research. This is a subject I've embraced and I find fascinating, and I think that after you hear Steve discuss it, you will as well. Well, Steve, thank you so much for joining us today on the Ohio Roots podcast. It is so cool to have you on here to talk about this very unique subject.
I'm glad to be here.
Appreciate it. If you've ever heard our podcast, I always start with a question that has a very general one, which is, I want to know what it is that got you interested in genealogy in the first place. Yes.
A favorite aunt. Well, I shouldn't say that. I've got many beloved aunts. Oh my God, I've already stepped in it. An aunt who had a great love of genealogy, my dad's sister. My dad grew up in a family of educators, and my grandmother was an educator. And so when I would go to my grandparents, when my grandmother was off for the summer, she would sell World Book encyclopedias. This was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Sure. And above the shelf on the World Book encyclopedias and all the others, she had the nice ones, there was a hand-drawn family tree that my dad's sister had done. And I would just stare. I would stare at that family tree on the wall, wondering who in the world were those people? And why were some of the spots empty? And then because I grew up in Appalachia, I was like, well, why does that name appear twice in the tree or three times? And so just an initial exposure, but then my dad's sister, who was doing genealogy at a high level in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, I got my first computer in the 80s, a Commodore 64.
Oh, you and me both, buddy.
And then when I got my first PC, one of the first pieces of software I had, I think it was a DOS version of Family Tree Maker. Okay. And I just started doing data entry. So my love of genealogy started by osmosis. I was just doing data entry for my aunt. Right. But then when my son was born in 92, I started to become much more interested, like, who are these names? Why do I keep typing in the same names? And then when the DNA tests started coming out, I started to verify and confirm the work that my aunt had done in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And she was really good. And so I was able to, with DNA, confirm a lot of the work that she had done. And in Appalachia, that's challenging. Right. So I had to learn how to deal with multiple relationships and pedigree collapse and a mildly endogamous community. Right. And so I thought if anybody was ever going to interview me for a podcast, it would have been for working with mildly endogamous populations. So no one has been more surprised by the past year than me.
Yeah. It's fascinating. It's obvious you embraced technology early on in the process of doing genealogy, because, a lot of folks haven't at that point. Certainly not when PCs first came out. It was probably a struggle for some folks. One of the things I know, and I'm what the tech community calls an early adopter. I'm a big fan of pretty much any tech that comes down the pike, and I'll give it a shot and keep an open mind about it. But I think with what's going on and with what people hear about in the news regarding artificial intelligence or AI, it seems like it's not clear to people what it actually is, what it actually isn't, what it can and can't do, and things like that. So if you wouldn't mind doing kind of an AI for dummies on what AI actually means for people.
Yes. Okay. Well, here's the 3-minute version from 35,000 feet.
Sure.
And I always start by saying this: words are slippery fish. My graduate studies are in linguistics. And so when we talk about artificial intelligence this year, it means something different this year than mostly the term's been around for 50 years.
Right.
But this year, when people use the term artificial intelligence or AI, they're talking about a specific subfield that really exploded 14 months ago.
Right.
And it wasn't brand new. There's been incremental developments in this field for many years. But 14 months ago, something significant happened. A combination of incremental improvements in the technology of dealing with language,
Sure.
a very slick user interface, a way that made it easy for people to do this stuff, and a critical mass, a critical number of people jumping on the bandwagon at the same time. Those three things changed the meaning of the word artificial intelligence in the popular culture. So in the popular culture, over the past 14 months, if you see a headline with AI in it, they're talking about a specific branch called natural language processing, or the specific tools are called large language models. And the simple way to think of these tools are, they do for words what a spreadsheet does for numbers.
Okay.
And just like a spreadsheet is good at addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and lets you slice and dice numbers and do really powerful things with numbers, these large language models let you slice and dice words and sentences and paragraphs and ideas.
Right.
And it's amazing in the limited scope of what it can do today. It's amazing what it can do. And what's exciting is that scope or range of what it can do is expanding at a shocking rate.
Right. And I get the impression that's what scares some people.
Yes,
is the rate at which it is expanding. I know I'm dating myself, but I think my first exposure to anything even comparable to AI was the Evil Computer in the War Games movie with Matthew Broderick.
Yes.
That very simple kind of AI.
Yes.
Or using random number generators to create results or things like that. So I am dating myself, obviously, but I think there's a generation of folks, and of course, many people who do genealogy are older than myself.
Yes.
And so I think what they're hearing about AI in the media can be pretty frightening.
Yes.
But in looking, I had an opportunity to review your website and look at some of the articles that you've written about AI. And for me, as someone who does genealogy and history, I find it incredibly exciting what's coming down the pike, perhaps, to aid us in what we're trying to do.
Yes.
So how is AI being applied like right now to genealogical research?
Yes. Well, just like I mentioned, there were in a spreadsheet with math, there's four basic math operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division.
Right.
With these large language models, there's similarly four basic transformations that you can do with language that are safe and reliable for genealogists to do. If you're an artist, if you're a poet, if you're doing more creative work, there's a lot more you can do. But if you're talking about a research where you have to put a footnote at the end of the sentence, if you have to know where the facts came from, right now, these are the four things that we can do: summarization, extraction, generation, and translation. And I'll unpack those a little bit if you'd like.
Please.
Summarization is when you take a lot of information and you distill it and condense it into something really powerful. This is the image I like is taking a dirty lump of coal, although we don't call coal dirty and lumpy in Ohio or Virginia. If you take a lump of coal and it turns into a diamond, you can make it smaller and turn it into a diamond. That's summarization. That's taking a will, for example, and distilling it down to a paragraph of what happened. Extraction, the image I like for extraction is finding golden needles in a field of haystacks. This is starting with a lot of information and plucking out just what you need. Again, for example, with the will, it could quickly extract names, relationships, gifts, things like that.
Right.
So it's very good. And we've got traditional ways of doing that, but the large language model lets you do a kind of fuzzy search that you give it a general term to search for, and it thinks of 20 synonyms that you've never even heard of, and it will pull that information out. So that's the second, extraction. Generation is kind of like the opposite of summation. It's making a little bit of information into a bigger chunk of information. It's taking a list, for example, collection of names, dates, relationships, places, events, and then generating that out into a narrative report or a story or a piece of creative nonfiction that has source citations. And then the last one is translation, which has a different usage than what it traditionally does. It includes translating from one human language to another. For example, from English to French, from French to German, from German to Portuguese, and then Portuguese back to English. And it does it better than any other machine translation out there now. So it's good at that human language translation, but it also does translation in several other important ways. Most importantly, it will take a sloppy first draft and turn it into a very polished second draft. It will translate a rough draft. It'll clean it up better than Grammarly ever wished. And it does it in the blink of an eye. Another way it'll do translation is it'll translate one style of language into another style. For example, it will take Shakespearean or Chaucer English and translate that into modern contemporary English. So if you've got a son or a granddaughter wading through Beowulf or the Canterbury Tales, and you want to help them understand what had happened, you drop a paragraph of that into one of these chatbots, and it tells you the plain modern English meaning. Finally, another way it translates is it can translate from the different language levels. It will take an academic scholarly article on relativity or on large language models that have written by postgraduate students, written by PhDs for PhDs, and it will simplify it for a college sophomore or an eighth grader. I usually go for the fifth grader. I'm a bit hard-headed. So I start with the fifth grade translation, and then I ramp up from there. It doesn't go the other way. It won't take your kindergartner's report on elephants and turn it into a PhD dissertation. But simplifying things, it does really good. Yeah, good to know.
Yeah.
So those
are
the
kids using it for those things.
Those are the four basic things that genealogists can do it at a serious level for genealogy.
The Ohio Roots podcast is brought to you by the Ohio Genealogical Society, the premier gateway for discovering your Ohio family history. To learn more about joining, visit www.ogs.org.
If you enjoy listening to the Ohio Roots podcast, we would really appreciate it if you could go to whatever platform it is that you listen and give us a good review. Reviews help us get more listeners and reach more people with Ohio Roots and what we're trying to do with the Ohio Genealogical Society. So please leave us a nice review, and thanks for listening.
There's also what I call dual use. It's imagine if you finished your genealogy, whatever that meant. If you completed every research question you ever had, and you were done with your genealogy, would you disconnect your house from the electrical grid because you no longer needed your laptop or your computer? No, you wouldn't, because you use electricity for 98% of your day is electrical use is non-genealogical. These tools these large language models are so transferable that many genealogists are going to find that they do administrative and other kind of work. It just gets that stuff out of the way and gives them more time to do genealogy. And then if you're an artistic or creative person, oh my goodness, there's so many things, even just with the language, without talking about image generation or animation or video or other things. The applications are just, they're growing every day. You can almost watch it, maybe not every day, but month to month. You can chart the what we call limits, the things that it fails to do today. The things that it fails to do today are the breakthroughs for tomorrow.
Okay.
And just over the past 14 months, we've seen tremendous things that we couldn't do 14 months ago, we can do today. And they're knocking down like dominoes.
You know, what's interesting to me, Steve, is as an administrator for a small nonprofit, we have a staff of 4 people. When I need to draft solicitation letters, fundraising letters, things like that, things that usually would take me a lot of time to kind of wordsmith. I find that using AI is very helpful to give me a framework on which to hang what I want to write. I will also admit, if anybody ever looks at our social media posts regarding the Ohio Roots podcast, all of the background graphic images for those with the microphones and things, created through DALL-E. So I use it to kind of make my job a little easier because I don't have the time to invest.
They're going to
that's a great tool.
You mentioned you're a historian. Historians are going to be able to identify the year 2023 and 2024 with pinpoint precision because of the artwork that was popular last year and this year, and the writing. And I want to say one of my, I've got the best job in the world. I'm the program director for the artificial intelligence program at the National Genealogical Society. And one of my responsibilities there is developing, in conjunction with other industry leaders and everyday folks, ethical guidelines. And the uses you've described are perfectly appropriate. Now, doesn't mean they're good. It's easy to make bad AI generated text, but it's also, it only takes a smidgen of effort to do it well. And there was a wonderful article in the New York Times in July of 2023. There's a regular columnist called The Ethicist. And he asked, is it okay to do, someone asked the ethicist columnist, is it okay to have AI help me with these administrative mundane tasks? And the answer is absolutely yes. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to be good. You can make it good if your prompt engineering gets a little better, and if you just proofread it and make sure your own voice is coming through. But then we have other questions about how much there's 2 questions with ethics: usage and disclosure. And sometimes we have to say that we've used AI, and other times that we don't. On this business kind of stuff, if in the olden days a secretary or a junior partner would have written something and would have gone uncredited, well, AI would go uncredited just as well.
As we look at the next 14 months of AI, what do you perceive will be the great advantages and maybe disadvantages of the technology for people who are doing genealogy research?
It's going to get, and there's a couple ways to approach this. One, it's going to become more ubiquitous every month. It's going to be everywhere. It used to be last year this time, if you wanted to use these tools, you had to go to a website to do it. Now the AI is coming into all your tools. It's now built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint. There's a very close relationship between Microsoft and the leading firm OpenAI. So you don't have to go to it. It's going to come to you. And that's only going to accelerate and expand. It's going to get cheaper and it's going to get better. And so if you started using it now, this is the worst it's ever going to be. It's the hardest it's ever going to be. It's only going to get easier to use and better to use. And it's only going to get cheaper to use. Now, specifically, there's some things that I anticipate will happen this year that I'm kind of excited about, and some that may be just a little bit We don't know.
Right.
The one that's perpetually on the horizon that I'm always asked about is handwriting recognition.
Okay.
Right. And so there's some ways that's very close, but handwriting is very hard.
Yeah.
So that would be a great one if that happens. And I'm told by folks who are much more knowledgeable than me that it is very close. But if you ever saw my handwriting, I don't know if we'll ever live to see an artificial intelligence that could read my scroll.
Right.
So that one's kind of always on the horizon. But two that I think that are more possible. One is if you've worked with images and you've generated images and you've tried to get text inside to an image, it's not too good at the spelling. Now this is going to, and I expect this could be fixed before the 4th of July.
Wow.
And this is going to have big consequences in genealogy world, because if we can now with confidence get words and names spelled correctly in an image, well, what's going to be the first thing you're going to do?
Me?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
You're going to make it. Most people are going to try to make a family tree. They're going to try to, they're going to, and so if that happens before the 4th of July, imagine what next holiday season is going to be like. Yeah. There's going to be 10,000 Etsy stores with crafty genealogists and creative family historians doing pillows and cross stitches with your family tree correctly generated on the image.
That kind of raises a question I didn't have written down for you, but websites like the kind of ubiquitous genealogy websites like Ancestry.com, FamilySearch.org, these other ones.
Yes.
How are, and I'll get back also to the idea that AI generates data from things that already exist, right?
Yes.
So if my family tree is on Ancestry, how can Ancestry use AI to facilitate their trade, their business, I guess?
MyHeritage recently came out with 2 new AI tools. Now, these big companies, a brief aside, this is where it gets funny. These people have been using the other parts of artificial intelligence. They've been using artificial intelligence to do lots of things for 20 years, but not the kind we're talking about the past 14 months. And they get a little salty if we start talking about as if AI is brand new, but we're specifically talking about these new kinds of large language models. Right. So with regard to large language models, MyHeritage just over the holidays came out with one. It will do that story generation. It will try to find some sourced facts and then spin that into a report. Now, the big vendors have been able to do this before. They've done this before, but it's getting better. My focus is not so much on what big, large commercial behemoths can do, but what mom and pop and small business genealogists, solo practitioners, how they can leverage these tools.
Okay. Well, and on that point, if someone was getting started in genealogy, wanted to use AI as a tool, what advice would you give them for that?
Yes. If here's what I do, because right now, and we're recording this on Groundhog's Day, 2024, for the past 14 months, the leader of the pack has been the company called OpenAI. And they're since for 11 months now, within OpenAI, the leader has been what's called GPT-4. That is the leader in the field. There's ways to play with this stuff for free, but here's what I honestly tell people. Unless you've paid the $20 to play with this for a month, do not complain that you're disappointed because you've only been skirting around the edges. For $20 a month, you can get access to GPT-4, and it is the difference between night and day. Now, there's ways to get access to GPT-4 without paying the $20, but you have to jump through a lot of hoops, and then it's still weak tea. And if somebody's listening and they want to know, you have to use Microsoft's browser called Edge, and then you can use their product called Copilot. And that does give you access to GPT-4. Again, because Microsoft and OpenAI, Microsoft essentially owns OpenAI at this point. They've invested so many tens of billions of dollars that they're closely related. But using even GPT-4 through the free versions, it is a weaker experience than actually using it through the OpenAI website. And this is the one that you hear talked about. It's called ChatGPT. And for that's free. For $20 a month, you get access to what's called ChatGPT Plus. And that's where the magic happens. That's where you can really see how powerful this is. And just in the past month, one of the big things that's happened, well, the past 3 months, right around the 1st of November, they made a new tool available through this $20 a month. You can create your own little bots, your own little assistants. These are, if you have a task that you do frequently, you have to have zero programming experience. And again, this was something that makes computer programmers a little bit salty. I think the medical terminology is butthurt. They get a little bit offended, but and that's why they're scared. Google and companies, they're laying off people tens of thousands at a time. Not computer programmers. They're laying off telephone support folks and that kind of thing. But the programmers can see the writing on the wall because computer programs are just another kind of language that these things excel at. But since November, the AI will interview you and says, what kind of little assistant would you like? And it'll ask you about a half dozen questions. It'll say, what would you like to do? How would you like me to talk to you? What would you like the response to look like? And then you've got that tool in the bag. And anytime you need to do that little task again, it's there for you. Now, what this is turning into, it could be the Apple Store of the next, 10 years. And so that's something that we see coming too. These are called custom GPTs. And that's included with the $20 a month. And if at $20 a month, it would be a value at $200 a month. But if you can't earn your $20 a month back in at the end of the first week, maybe you're doing a kind of boutique bespoke genealogy that you need ink and quill and parchment and nobody has to do this. Only do this if you think it's fun and interesting and it might benefit you.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for joining us today on the Ohio Roots podcast and pulling the curtain back.
We just got started.
I know it feels that way, and pulling the curtain back on the wizard of AI for us. I really appreciate that, and I look forward to following a little more of your information on your website. I'll be sure to put a link to that in the notes for the episode. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'd be glad to visit again anytime. Take care.
Sounds great. You too. Bye bye.
Thanks.
I want to thank Steve for joining us today and sharing with us his amazing knowledge on AI and how it can make us better genealogists. We'll need to have Steve back on the Ohio Roots podcast in several more months just to see what new and amazing advances in AI occur in the meantime. You can learn more about AI and genealogy at Steve's website, www.aigenealogyinsights.com, and we'll be sure to link to it in this episode's notes. Thanks for listening to the Ohio Roots podcast.
The Ohio Roots podcast is brought to you by the Ohio Genealogical Society, the premier gateway for discovering your Ohio family history. Hosted by OGS Executive Director Noel Poyer and edited by Luke Poyer. Theme song is Beautiful Ohio, recorded by Bob Stanley and his orchestra in 1944. To learn more about joining the Ohio Genealogical Society, visit www.ogs.org.